In Agudaro, Queen Maku birthed a serpent prince, Iduma, after a divine pact. Loved by her but feared by all, he was banished to the forbidden forest. 10 years later, the land withered. When Maku returned to him, he asked, "Will you choose the kingdom or me?" Destiny stirred. The forest air was heavy, thick with moisture and something else, something ancient. Queen Maku fell to her knees, her breath caught between disbelief and awe. Before her stood not the small serpent she once cradled in her arms, but a towering, majestic creature. Iduma's scales shimmered with gold beneath the filtered light, his body coiled like a crown around the great tree that had become his throne. His eyes, still that same glowing amber, held her in a gaze both familiar and terrifying. "Will you choose the kingdom or me?" he asked again, his voice echoing like the rustle of 1,000 leaves, soft yet deep, with the weight of thunder rolling beneath it. Maku's lips parted, but no sound escaped. She clutched the fabric of her wrapper, knuckles pale, chest rising and falling in shallow bursts. Around her, the golden snakes circled slowly in perfect silence, their scales gleaming like embers. Not a hiss, not a rattle, just silence, like the whole forest was holding its breath, waiting for her answer. Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. "Iduma." He didn't move. He didn't speak. Just watched. His eyes no longer blinked with a child's innocence. They pulsed with something deeper. Power, knowledge, pain. She thought of the kingdom, of the villagers who once praised her name, of the golden throne now surrounded by drought and fear. She thought of Obenknife, her husband, the man who once loved her but cast their son away like filth. She thought of the women who whispered behind closed doors, the guards who dared not look at her. What had she really left to protect? And yet, "You're my son," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. Still, the snakes did not flinch. Maku's heart beat like war drums. She remembered the weight of him in her arms, the lullabies, the way he'd blink at her voice. But that boy was gone. This was something more. Something not of the world she once knew. She tried to rise, but her knees buckled. The ground beneath her vibrated faintly, as if something beneath the earth had begun to stir. Iduma tilted his head slightly. "I need more time," she whispered. But time, it seemed, had run out. For 10 years, Queen Maku wore her crown like a shackle. The palace halls echoed with silence, and every mirror she passed seemed to flicker with images not her own. At night, sleep became a battleground. She would close her eyes only to find herself waist-deep in river water, the wind hissing her name. Whispers laced the air, soft, haunting, and endless. "Mother," they said, "why did you leave me?" She would jolt awake, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, reaching for something, someone who wasn't there. In the days that followed Iduma's exile, she told herself it was mercy, that leaving him in the forest was better than watching him be killed. But deep inside, guilt bloomed like a bruise. It grew darker with every harvest that failed, with every prayer that went unanswered. The people called it a curse. The king blamed the gods. But Maku knew better. She had abandoned her son not just to the wild, but to a fate not even the gods had fully revealed. And yet, he never left her. In her dreams, she saw him growing, not in human form, but as something regal, powerful, a prince of shadow and light. She would see him gliding through the trees, his golden eyes burning with quiet sorrow. Sometimes, he'd stop and look directly at her, through her. Not angry, not vengeful, just waiting. Those dreams were her only solace. Proof that he lived. Proof that the bond between mother and child had not been completely severed. But dreams had their own weight. And every morning, she awoke more broken, more hollow. The world still saw a queen. But inside, she was only a mother who had made the wrong choice and feared she was already too late to make it right. Iduma turned without a word and began gliding through the forest. The golden snakes parted like trained sentries, forming a path as wide as a king's road. Queen Maku hesitated, then followed, her feet crunching against moss and roots as her eyes darted from tree to tree. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. Leaves shimmered unnaturally in the light, vines twisted as though listening, and every step felt like it echoed inside something alive. He spoke not in hisses, but with full clarity. A voice low, commanding, but unmistakably his. "This forest is not cursed," he said. "It is awake." Before her, vines writhed up from the earth, lifting like arms, bowing slightly as he passed. The trees leaned inward. A gentle breeze stirred, but it wasn't random. It carried whispers in a language older than human breath. Iduma paused beside a small pool of water, and with a flick of his tongue, the surface rippled, then shifted. Shapes formed in the reflection, visions of animals sleeping peacefully, of trees blooming in seconds, of lightning touching down with reverence. Then, with another flick, the water stilled. "Rivers obey me. The roots listen," he said, turning to her. "Even the fireflies come when I call." As if on cue, hundreds of fireflies swirled around him, forming a glowing halo of golden light. Queen Maku could hardly breathe. It was beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful. He was not just a boy lost to the woods. You command them?" she asked, trembling. "No," he replied. "They follow. Because the forest chose me. Because she, Jenna, speaks through me." Maku stared at him, her heart twisting. She had carried him in her womb, held him in her arms. But the being before her was no longer just her son. He was something else. Something greater. King Obenknife sat alone in the palace chamber, staring into the dying embers of a once roaring fire. His beard, now streaked with gray, trembled slightly with each breath. Wrinkles lined his face like cracks in stone, and his eyes, once sharp, seemed clouded with something heavier than age, fear. The dreams came nightly now. Serpents, massive and glowing, coiling around the throne, whispering his name. Sometimes they spoke in his voice. Sometimes they wore the queen's face. And always, they ended with golden eyes staring straight into his soul, unblinking. He never said the name. Not once in 10 years. Not even in prayer. Not even in shame. The kingdom was unraveling. The earth had hardened. The rivers had shrunk to sluggish streams. Yet when the village elders urged him to go to the river shrine and plead for mercy, he slammed his staff against the floor. "I will not bow to the river," he hissed. "This is our land, not hers." But in the dead of night, when the servants were gone and the wind howled like the old tales warned it would, the truth clawed at his chest. He had made a mistake. A fatal one. He had sent the serpent child away, cast out the god's gift or judgment, whatever it was. And something inside him knew the forest had not forgotten. He would return, not as a boy, not even as a beast, but as something more. And when he did, Obenknife feared it wouldn't just be vengeance. It would be justice. Queen Maku stood before her son beneath the twilight canopy, her voice trembling like the leaves above them. "Iduma, please," she whispered, her hands reaching out as if to touch the boy he once was. "You don't have to do this. You're not a monster. You were born from love." Iduma watched her in silence, his golden eyes unblinking, unreadable. Around them, the golden snakes coiled but did not move, like an audience waiting for a verdict. "You speak of love," he finally said, voice like the rustle of wind through dry reeds. "But love did not shield me from the cold. Love did not stop the guards from dragging me away. It was not love that sealed me in a forest like a curse." Maku stepped closer, desperate. "But I came back. I chose you." "You chose me when it was safe to do so," he replied, not cruel, just true. "But the trees, they bent for me when I had no mother. The animals did not flee from me. They slept beside me, protected me. They never once asked if I deserved it. Tears streamed down her face. But what about forgiveness? He tilted his head. Forgiveness is a gift, and the kingdom has never asked for it. Maku's voice broke. Then what do you want? I want them to see, he said, eyes glowing brighter. To face what they did. The kingdom must remember. It must face its truth. The air thickened. Even the fireflies dimmed. And in that moment, Maku knew this wasn't about revenge. It was reckoning. That night, Queen Maku drifted into uneasy sleep beneath the forest canopy, her head resting against the twisted root of an ancient tree. The air was still, but her dreams churned like a storm-tossed river. Suddenly, she stood knee-deep in dark water. Mist rose around her, thick and humming with voices. Then, from the rippling surface, a figure emerged half engulfed in flame, half flowing like the river itself. It was Ijena, the river goddess, eyes like twin whirlpools, mouth flickering like fire. You came back, the goddess said, her voice layered like many waters speaking at once. You came for him. Maku nodded, her voice caught in her throat. He's still my son. And that is why the world still stands, Ijena replied, stepping closer. Her flame didn't burn the water, it danced with it. Your love delayed the judgment. But you cannot stop the flood. What does that mean? Maku asked, panic rising. Please, tell me what to do. You already did what only a mother could, the goddess said softly. But he is no longer just yours. He is mine. He is the river's. The water surged, rising to Maku's chest. The flame swirled above her head. She screamed, but no sound came. Then she woke, gasping, drenched in sweat. Her eyes darted wildly in the dark forest clearing. And there he was, Iduma, perched silently on a rock nearby. His gaze met hers, calm, unreadable. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. She knew he had felt it too. The dream, the warning, and deep inside, she feared it wasn't just a message. It was a countdown. The market square was alive with heat and murmurs when the stranger appeared. No one saw her arrive, yet suddenly she was there, veiled in deep indigo, her staff carved with river symbols, her voice clear despite the rising wind. I come with warning, she said, eyes hidden beneath the veil. The river's air walks again. The blood of Ijena stirs. At first, the people laughed nervously, glancing around. But then she pulled a leather pouch from beneath her robe and unrolled brittle scrolls, their ink faded but legible. On them were symbols no villager had seen in generations, marks of the ancient pact made between the royal bloodline and the river. She read aloud, told them of the queen's plea for a child, of the bargain sealed in silence, and of the spirit child wronged long ago. The crowd hushed. Mothers clutched their children. Elder men stepped forward, brows furrowed. Then the whispers returned louder now. The queen broke the pact. The river wants revenge. When word reached the palace, King Obenknife stormed into the square with guards. This woman is a liar, he bellowed. Seize her. But the people didn't move. Not yet. Instead, they turned their eyes toward their king, not in reverence, but with growing suspicion. Why hadn't he ever spoken of the child? Why did his face pale at the mention of the river's heir? And in that silence, something shifted. Fear was no longer aimed at the stranger. It was turning inward. Queen Maku stood at the edge of the forest clearing, her hands trembling as she adjusted the cloth around her waist. She had made her choice. She would return to the palace, face Obenknife, and beg him to stop whatever was coming. To listen. To surrender to peace. But behind her, Iduma's head slowly lifted. His tongue flicked once into the air. The snakes around him froze, their golden scales stiffening. Then the wind died. The forest, so alive moments ago, fell into a terrifying silence. Above, the sky darkened unnaturally, as if a veil had been pulled over the sun. Clouds churned like boiling ash, heavy and fast. Then, without warning, a bolt of red lightning cracked across the sky, splitting it like glass. Forest animals, monkeys, birds, even insects, scattered in every direction. Maku gasped, turning back to Iduma. "What's happening?" she cried, panic rising in her chest. Iduma's gaze remained fixed on the sky. Calm, cold, inevitable. "Judgment begins," he said. The words struck like thunder. The ground beneath Maku's feet rumbled, a low growl from deep within the earth, like something ancient was waking up. Leaves trembled. A tree cracked in the distance and fell with a deafening crash. Far beyond the hills, the distant clang of palace bells echoed through the air. Not celebration, not mourning, alarm. Queen Maku clutched her chest. The sky above the kingdom turned crimson, and somewhere in the wind, the river began to sing. To be continued. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when part 3 drops.